Hello everyone, it's me Levester, and here we have another simple escape room tutorial. And in this one we use a first person controller so the player can navigate using a mouse and keyboard. And what they have to do is go to the different ATM machines, and when they press the E key, it changes the shape for the shapes by the door, and they got to get a certain combination to get out the room. So let's get into it. So for this tutorial, we are going to be using Unity's first-person character controller, and you can see this is by Unity, and it uses URP. We are also going to be using this 3D free modular kit here. We're going to be using this ATM here. We're going to use this in our escape room as well. We're also going to be using Lean Tween in our project. So with this first-person controller with Unity, so it already comes with phone control. So you can see in this little picture, it has if you're trying to make a mobile game, so it already comes with mobile control inputs and all that kind of stuff. And it uses Cinemachine, and it also uses the new input system. So we are going to be using this in our project, and we're going to go over some of the new input system as well to get some of our things working. This modular kit, we're just going to use this for our environment to build it. ATM here, we are going to be using this pretty much like a workstation. The player is going to have to walk up to this to make things happen. And then Lean Tween, I'm going to show you how I use Lean Tween to give the game a little more pizzazz in there. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so here we are in Unity Hub, and we're going to go ahead and go click on New Project over here. And if you look down in this list of templates that Unity comes with, you can already see that they have a first-person core and a third-person core. And this is going to come with those assets that we saw in the asset store. So that first-person character controller by Unity, if we download this template, it's going to already come with it versus us having to go through the package manager and edit it that way. So either way is fine. So if you already have a project that you want to integrate the first-person controller into, then you can do that just by going through the package manager. We're adding it in the asset store, then opening it in the package manager. Or if you run a fresh project, you can just come to this core, hit download template like we're doing here, and then open the project that way. One thing to notice, if you are adding this to a new project, that this will come with the new input system. So make sure you know what you're doing with the new input system. We're going to go over that today. We're in this tutorial how to create some functions and stuff with the new input system. So just stick along and we'll get into that as well. So I'm going to just call this my space escape room, I guess. You can name it anything you want, but that's what I'm going to name mine. I'm going to go ahead and create this project using a first person core. Create project, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so one thing I forgot to mention, one important thing when you're selecting your new project is what render pipeline you want to use. So if you are going to start with one of these templates and you're wondering what render pipeline it's using, all you have to do is hit this read more and you can see the details about this project. So you can see here is using the universal render pipeline. The platforms that it's used for is pretty much everything. So just a little tidbit of information and the packages that it come with as well. So let's go look at another one. So if we go to like this 2D mobile here and hit read more, you can see this is going to start with the built-in pipeline, and it's only for iOS and Android. What kind of packages it come with as well. So just another little negative information there. So that is that there. So let's get in the project. So here we are in our Unity project, and you can see if you did use that core to start your project, and it's going to start you off here in this playground. But if you didn't, then you can just go ahead and go to the package manager and add those assets once you add, after you already added them to your account from the asset store. So I'm going to go ahead and add those. And then just a reminder, if you are in Unity, just sign into your account and just hit add to my assets, and that's going to be able to allow you to see them in your package manager. So go ahead and go to these assets, hit add to my assets, and then back in Unity, if you go to Window, Package Manager, and then up here where it says Packages, make sure you are in My Assets. And in here, you can just search for what you're looking for. So if you didn't get that, if you didn't start with the core, then you can just put in Unity, and it should come up, Unity Tech. Did it come up? It did not. Let's try first person. And then, yeah, here it is at the bottom. Standard assets, first person controller, or first person character controller. So just go ahead and import that and all the other ones that you don't have already. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and import all the assets that we have listed for this project. Now that we have all the assets that we need for the project, we can go ahead and set up our player. Move on to set up our player. So if you're not already in the playground scene that came with the first person controller, just go ahead and navigate to the scene. You might see it in scenes and playground, or you might have, if you added it from the asset store, you might have like samples, then scenes and playground, or you can always just search here, say playground, and search it that way. So once you are here in the playground scene, you can see what's already here. We have the player capsule, the player follow controller, and the main camera. On the main camera, you might see this little icon next to it, and that's just letting you know that this main camera has the Cinemachine brain on it, and is using Cinemachine right now. So if we hit play here, we can see that we can already walk around with the WASD keys. We hit the space bar, we can jump, we can sprint with the shift key. So this is already taking up a lot of the heavy lifting of creating this first person controller for us, and using the mouse I can look around as well. So we can just focus more on building our game versus having to set up a whole controller with all the controls and everything. And like I said, this is using a new input system as well, so that's also a plus, so we can use it for different devices. If I come out of play, you may notice that it has this UI canvas starter asset inputs. If I turn that on by going over here in the inspector and clicking this checkbox, if I switch over to game, you can now see that I have these controls on screen, and these are for my mobile controls. So if I'm making a mobile game, you can see it already has these here. So if I hit play, you can see that I already have my mobile controls there for me if I'm making a mobile game here. So all that is already set up for us, and we can just focus more on building the game aspect. So if you do see your mouse, so one of the things about this is you click on the screen, then it locks your mouse. But so if you want to get your mouse back, just hit escape, and you should see your mouse back. So I'm just come out of play. So to set up our player, we are just going to grab the components and put it in a prefab and use that for our own scene. So what we're going to do here is right click in the hierarchy, go to create empty, call this the player, hit enter, and then you can see my transform is not at 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to just go ahead and switch that, reset that to 0, 0, 0. And I'm going to switch back to my scene view just so I can see everything. And you can see that's at 0, 0, 0 now. So I'm just going to put in the components to make my player work here. So I'm going to grab this player capsule. I'm going to grab my player follow camera. I'm going to grab the main camera. And if you are using a UI, or you are making a mobile game and you need the mobile controls, just go ahead and grab this UI canvas startup as well. So with all those in under my player, I'm going to just drag my player down here in my asset folder to create that prefab. So now you can see I have a prefab for my player. And if I go to my own scene, go to a new scene, so click new scene, basic input, and you can save it if you want to. I really don't have to, but we can hit save. If I right click, go to 3D object, create a plane, and you can see it's not at 0, 0, 0 either. I can just right click, go to reset, and then I can just drag my player in, and if I hit play, oh, hold on, I want to delete this other main camera. So take this main camera that came with the scene, go ahead and delete that. Now if I hit play, now I'm with my player here. You can see I have the same controls here as I did before. And then to turn off those mobile controls, just go to the UI canvas starter assets and just disable that so those are turned off. So come over here, click the disable button, and now those are turned off. One thing about UI and canvases, if you are going to use them, you have to have a event system in your hierarchy in your project. So if you are going to use this and you're wondering why your buttons aren't working, make sure if you go to UI, you have the event system in there. And then since we are using the new input system, go ahead and hit this replace with input system blah 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 module. And that should get you set up with using that if you are making a mobile game. So now back to our checklist, we can check out the setup player. All right, so now we're ready to build our environment, and we are going to be using those modular pieces that we got from the asset store, and that's going to be found in this barking dog folder here. So let's go to 3D free modular kit. Then in here they have prefabs, and then here you should see the pieces. And if your pieces are pink, or if you drag them in your scene in here and they are pink, then you need to convert them to URP. And to do that, what you want to do is go to Window, Rendering, then Render Pipeline Converter. You want to click this drop down, click Built into URP, and then click on Material Upgrade, and you're going to initialize the converter. So you should see some assets here that needs to be converted to URP. So make sure you hit that Material Upgrade check, and then initialize converter, and then hit Convert Assets, and that should make them not pink anymore. So the issue is when they were created in probably a different program or something that wasn't URP. So you had to convert those materials to be URP materials. So that's what that is. So just go ahead and hit that conversion, and we can go ahead and start building our level here. So this is where you can be as creative as you want to be. For me, I'm just going to create a simple room with four walls and a door. So I'm gonna just start with my floor, and I can just drag that in the scene. And then you can see that this is not at the 000. So I can right click and hit reset and put that at 000. So now I have this floor piece here at 000. So I can go ahead and make my floor. I'm gonna disable this plane right quick, and I can just hit my floor, hit Control D, and remember, to make your life easier to snap pieces together, you can just hold to the edge and hold V, and then you be able to snap the pieces to each other. So I can just create this floor here, these two pieces, then I can select those two floor pieces, hit Control D, move it out, hold the V with those two floor pieces selected, hold V to connect that corner, select that corner, and then I can snap it to the other piece. And with those four created, I can highlight all of those, hit Control D, and snap. Then once again, highlight all of those, Control D, move one this way, and snap that. Control D one more time. I think this might be, yeah, this is big enough for my room. So there. So now I easily made a floor there by using the holding V to snap these pieces together. So I'm gonna go ahead and continue building this room here, and I will talk to you when I'm done. All right, so there we have it. Now we have our simple room here, and we can walk around in here. Clear that. I don't know what that was, but you may have saw me like rotate things like at certain degrees. So to do that, if you click on the object and go to the rotate tool, you can see you can freely rotate it anywhere. But if you want to snap it to certain degrees of angles, or you want to get like exactly 90 degrees like I was doing, just hold the control and then you can see that little disc pop up there, and then it will snap. Think, yeah, every 5 degrees, 25 degrees is snapping, 15 degrees. Yeah, every 15 degrees is snapping there. So that's how I was able to get some accurate snapping there on those. But if we hit play, you see I can walk around. I'm gonna have to fix that door a little bit there. But I am in this room here and I can walk around. Come out of play. So a little bit of cleanup here. Let me look at this little gap in this door. Do that over there. There we go. Fix that. And then now that we have all these environment pieces out, we are just going to do, like I said, a little cleanup here in our hierarchy. And what I like to do is just go to game object, create an empty game object, and I say environment, or you can call this room. If I can spell right. There we go. I spelled it wrong. There we go. Environment. And I can grab all of these things that make up my environment. Throw that as a child of here. And then just go ahead and make this all static and all the children static as well, because I know they're not going to move, and it's just better for optimization and lighting. Another thing that we can go over later as well is lighting and stuff. So now we have our environment built and we can walk around this little room here. So go back to our checklist. We have built our environment. All right, so next we need to set up our ATM/kiosk machines that the player is going to interact with. I'm pretty much going to do this in two steps. First, we're going to set up the trigger. So when the player walks up to it, then the screen pops up and it shows the player some information. And then we're going to set up the interaction. So when you are at it and you press a button, then something happens. So the interaction there. So first, let's set up the ATM so the player can walk to it. So down here in our assets, you have this ATM folder, the CGY ATM. So let's go in there, find the prefabs, and here you can see all the different colors of the ATM that they have. So we're just going to start with one of them. I'm going to pick the green one and throw that in the scene there. And then on this, so one thing we need for here to make it interactable is the collider. So we're going to add a box collider by going to add component and box collider. And then we're going to move it a little bit in front, move this box collider a little bit in front of it. So that's the area that the player has to walk to. So for the, where it says center, in the Z direction, I'm going to say 0.5. And you can see the green box there for my collider moved a little bit forward in front of it. And like I said, this is going to be the area that the player has to walk into to trigger this interaction. We also want to check this little box that says is trigger to make this a trigger there. So next so what we want to happen is a little screen to pop up when the player comes in this area. And how we're going to do that is by putting a world space canvas onto this ATM machine right here. So if I go to this ATM and I right click, go down to UI, and then I can add a panel. And when we first add a panel, it's going to be really big here. But what we want to do is scale that down we'll scale the canvas down to be world space so the player can see it in the world. So if I click on canvas, they have this render mode here. We're going to change that to world space, and then we're going to resize it. So I'm going to put this at 0, 0, 0. Now put the height and width at 10 by 10. And you can see that scaled it down pretty decently there. We're just going to have to scale it down a little bit more. You may see like this little pixelated um, part here, and that's just your panel. It's like the default image of the panel, and we can just go ahead and remove that. So I'm going to just click this little circle here, go all the way to the top, and say none. There we go. Now we have a little bit of better panel there. So now we pretty much have two options here. We can either keep scaling down the canvas, or we can scale down the panel. What I'm going to do, I'm going to scale down the canvas just because I want it to be just for this little ATM here. So it's at 10 by 10. Let me go 1 by 1 and see what that looks like. That might be too small there. No, actually it's a decent size. I actually want it a little bit smaller. So say 0.5 by 0.5 for the width and the height there. So that's a good size for me. And then I'm going to move it into a position where I want it like over this little screen. And then I'm going to change the rotation in the X direction. So it's at an angle there. There we go. Just fix the angle a little bit. There we go. And then for the panel, what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it a black panel. So like a black screen. And then you can see it's faded a little bit. And that's just changing its alpha value. I'm going to make that a little more darker. Go 200 there. Next, I'm going to pretty much do the same thing to add some text here. So on this panel, I'm going to right click, go down to UI, and I'm going to add Text Mesh Pro, Text Mesh Pro. And if this is your first time importing Text Mesh Pro into your project, you might get a prompt to say import the Text Mesh Pro essentials. So just go ahead and hit import the essentials, and we'll get here. And then you can give this a name, just say screen text there. And now we just need to resize this as well. And for my text, I just like to change the scale here. So instead of resizing the box by the length and the width, just because with text with this width and height, it can get a little messy. And once it's smaller, it's a lot easier to deal with. So I'm just going to change the scale here. Say 0.01, well, 1. And you see now my text box is a little bit over and it's backwards. So what I can do is just flip it. So in the rotation and the Y, I just hit 180. Now turn it around. Now I can resize my box. So if I go to my rect tool here, I can put my text within here. And then I can just change the font size to be really small. So let's say 4 to 5. We'll go 5 for there. And then also in here, I can just change the alignment to be in the middle. So now we have our text there. And like I said, first I just went ahead and just changed the scale to like 0.01. And then once it was small enough for me to grab the box, I used my rect tool to put it inside my little screen panel box here. And then I aligned it, changed the font size and aligned it there. So now our ATM is good to start coding and adding a script to it so it knows what to do when it interacts with the player. So I'm just going to move it to a location in this room. I'm going to put this in the back right here. And then I'm going to go back to my asset folder and creating my scripts folder. I'm going to create a new script and call this ATM. I'm going to open that up and we are going to get to coding. All right, so here we are in our script. And like I said on our checklist, we're going to set up the trigger first. So when a player comes up to this kiosk, we want to trigger an action, let it know that the play is here. So first, in here, we don't need the start and update. So we can go and delete those. And then we can say private void on trigger. And let's look at these. So we start typing in on trigger. We can see we have a couple options here. We have on trigger enter, we have on trigger exit, we have on trigger stay. So the on trigger enter is called when the colliding object first enters the space. So as soon as you hit that trigger box, it's going to do this action. Then we have the on trigger exit. So this happens when the player or when the colliding object leaves the space. So you're in that box area and you leave out the space, then something happens. And then you have on trigger stay, and this happens while the player is in that space. So it's called once per frame as long as the colliding objects are touching each other essentially. So what we want to do here is say on trigger enter because we want to have something happen when the player enters this space. So let's hit on trigger enter, and I just hit tab to make that come in here. So I'm going to say if other dot game object dot compare tag, oh, not that, dot compare tag is player, then I can say do something. Yeah, I think I'm missing a close parenthesis there. There we go. And let's do a debug dot log for now. And I can say entered space. So like I said, so this is going to detect. So if the other game object that's colliding with me is tagged as player, then I'm going to say debug.log entered space. And then we can go ahead and write the other one for the exit. So private void on trigger exit. And what we can do is just copy this up here, put it down here, and say the space. And I can save that. We can go in Unity and see what happens. So on my green ATM, I'll go ahead and add my ATM script. So I can either just hit add component and type in ATM, or I can just drag it up onto the game object. So a couple ways you can add it to the game object there. So make sure you have your box collider set as is trigger, and then it's looking for the tag player. So make sure that your player tag, so your player capsule, is really the one that's going to be moving, but you can just go ahead and tag this whole thing as player. So now when I hit play, I should be able to walk up to this and see a debug message saying I entered the space or I left the space. So I'm gonna hit play, turn around to the kiosk, and walk up to it. You can see I got my debug message down there, said entered space. I walk out, I get left the space. All right, so now we got that working. Now let's make the screen pop up when we enter the space and leave the space by using lean tween. And we're just going to take this panel, and like I said, we're going to make it pop up and using lean tween. So let's go back to the code. All right, so we're going to use lean tween to make this box appear and disappear. So one first thing first is we need a reference to the screen that we're going to use. So what we're going to say is public game object. We can call this the ATM screen. And there's other ways you can do this. You can just, if you don't want to use lean tween, you can just say, come in here and put ATM screen dot set active true and false, and that will turn it on and off for us. But we, like I said, with lean tween, we can give it a little more pizzazz in our game. So what we want to do is say lean tween dot scale, and then the way this is set up is first you need a reference to the game object that you want to scale. Then you need to tell it what you want to scale it to, and then you want to tell it how much time you want it to get to that point. So what we're going to say is ATM screen with game object that we want to scale. Hold on, ATM screen, and we want it to go to the scale of 1, so 1, 1, 1. So we can say vector 3.1, and let's say we want it to take 2 seconds to get there. So here we're saying we want to reference the ATM screen, and this vector 1 is the same thing as writing like new vector 3, comma, with parentheses 1, 1, 1. So this is just a shortcut way of saying, like it says here, shorthand for writing vector 3, 1, 1, 1. So we know we want the scale to just be 1, 1, 1, so we can just put that there. And then next we can just copy this line, so when the player walks out of this area, we want it to go back to 0. And vector 3 has a handy dandy shorthand for 0, so we can just hit dot 0. And like I said, it's the same thing as writing 0, 0, 0. Let's save that and go back to Unity and see what happens. So we'll come back to Unity, click on that ATM screen here, and now you can see our ATM script is looking for the ATM screen game object, which is just this panel here. We'll throw that down there. And then one thing with this lean tween, since we wanted to start at 0, 0, 0 and then go to 1, 1, 1, make sure you change the scale on your panel to be 0, 0, 0. And let me turn on that mark. There we go. And remember, this little icon here allows you to constrain these proportionally. So I can just put 0 on 1 and it turns all those to 0. So now let's walk up to the screen and see what happens. I come in here, walk up, and there you see it pops up. If I walk away, it goes down. So that's good. That looks a lot better than it just popping in and popping out. But you can take that a step further. So with lean tween, it comes with ease functions. So if I come in here and say dot set ease and bounce, or ease in bounce, or ease out bounce, that's just going to make it a little more cool looking. So dot set ease and bounce here too, and save that. And I have another video that shows like all these ease in. So if I go back and show you, there's a lot of these different configurations that you can use, and that does a lot of things. So like set ease in, you got bounce back, cubic, elastic, all these do different things. So it's just what your preference and what you like. And I put a link to the video that I have showing like these different ones that you can use. I think I also have a script on my Kofi page that has these different ones that you can just plug in the script and you can test them out yourself. So let's just change this one to say set ease in quad, so we can see two different actions there. So I hit save there, go back to Unity. Hit play. I come up here. You can see it bounced in a little bit like that. If I go out, it look like it just left out, but that's probably just what that one does. Like I said, there it is, bouncing out. So like I said, those eight ease functions just help it give you a little bit more to your project. So that is the trigger function. So we set up the trigger function here. And next we want to set up the interactions. But before we get to that, I want to show you a little quick hand for the if statements. We don't need these debug log statements anymore, so we can just go ahead and get rid of those. If you go to this line and hit Control X, you can just delete that line, whole line. And now you can see that these if statements only have one line. So if you have a one line if statement, then you really don't need your brackets, and you can write it this way with an indent. So if I get rid of these, so now this will still give me the same function as the if statement. So when you have like a one line if statement, you can just indent underneath your if statement, and I'll save you a few lines in your code. So if I hit save and go back to Unity, I'll still have the same effects of that if statement. All right, so now we have the interaction part set up, well, the triggering part set up. Next, we're going to work on the interaction and get into the new input system and how to work with that to set up interactions. Okay, so what we want to do now is set up the new a action with the new input system. And what we want to do is when we are in the little space where we trigger the player, we know the player is there, we want to hit a key on the keyboard and make an action happen. So the old way of doing that is we will go in the code. So if we go to our code, we would go in the update function. So we would say public, well, I say private void update. So in this update function, we would say if input that get key escape, or whatever key we want it to be. So let's say the space bar. So in the old input system, we would do something like this or get the access from the inputs and things like that. And we would just put an action in here. But there's a couple flaws with this. And one being that it's continuously updates. So since this is an update function, it's going to be continuously looking for a key input for each frame. So that's one thing that is not used in the new input system. And then also this way, it's only tied to the keyboard. So here it's just a space button. But what if I want to put this on mobile, or what if I want to put this on the Switch or PlayStation? Then they don't have the space bar, so I had to say pretty much look at like the input maps and go through the input manager and things like that to set it that way. But now with the new input system, we don't have to do it this way. So I'm just going to exit out of that, save, and let's go back to Unity right quick, and I can show you how to get to the new input system, at least the default one here that comes with the player controller. So here we are in our player controller. Make sure we're back on our project panel here. If I go to player capsule and scroll down, you can see it has the player input and it has this action. This is the action map. So if I click on that, it should take me to the starter asset action map. And here you can see it's in assets input system. So if I open up this action map, you can see here is where all the actions for the player is housed. So we have the move, which is mapped to the WASD key in the left stick of a gamepad. You have a look, the jump, and the sprint. And these are matched to, like I said, gamepad and the left key. So with the new input system, we can just set it up on this map here, and then we can set up like what systems or what controls we want to set up to map it to different things here. So if we want to add a new action, so let's go ahead and click this actions here. And I can say, this is my action key. And here it says no binding. That pretty much means it doesn't have a path, or it doesn't know um, what to do with this. So if I click on this path here, I can say keyboard, and you can see I have joysticks, gamepad. So I click on gamepads, you can see the different buttons, and somewhere in here, right here, it says specific gamepad. So you have PlayStation controller, Switch controller, Xbox controller. So this makes it easier versus having to look online for a controller map key and then knowing like which key goes to which map and certain numbers and all that kind of stuff. So this makes it a little easier, and also has this listen too. So if you have your controller connected to your computer, you can hit this listen and then just press the button on the controller and it'll automatically map to that button that you just pressed. So it makes it a little easier. So let's go back. We want to go to keyboard, and we're going to go by location of key, and then here we can just say the E key. And then you can also add more. So if I wanted to add more bindings to this, I can add another binding. So if I want to make this for Xbox and PlayStation and a Switch, I can just come in here and say gamepad, Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and just add the key that I want for each system. But I don't need that right now. Then also, if you click on action key, another important thing is this action type. So here we just want a button, which is just a on and off value. So either you press the button or you didn't press the button. But if you want it to be like a vector 3, so like a joystick or something, then you can go to value, and then you have like the different axes and different things like that to control the vector 3s. So you can change this to whatever your use case is. But for us, we're just going to keep it at a button here, because we just need it for our input here. So we have it say that we want to go to the keyboard, and there's one more thing we need to do to be able to access this in our code, and that is to set up this generate C# class. And if you accidentally clicked away from this, all you have to do is click down here on your starter assets again. So if I accidentally clicked on player, if I click on the starter assets, that gets this back here. So I'm gonna just go ahead and click this checkbox and just hit apply here. And that's going to allow me to access these in the code. Oh, and it looks like I already had one in here, so I got an error. Oh no, let me delete that. So I did have an error with this, so I just hit this checkbox and hit apply, but it looked like I had, when I did that, it popped up an error, but I had to pretty much delete what I had, which was the starter assets here, and then give it a new unique name. So I just called it my controls, and I just if you do get that error, and I think it's just because it has this starter assets input already, and it always had, yeah, it already has that namespace of starter assets. um, so what you want to do is give this, when you hit this generate C# class, just go ahead and give this a unique name. The C# class name, I just named it my controls, and hit apply, and you should be able to not get that error here. But with that, we are now able to access this in our code. So let's go back to our script with the ATMs. All right, so now to work with the new input system in our code is a few steps that we need to do to make sure everything is working. So just might get a little complicated. Just rewatch this part if you need to. But the first thing we need to do is have a reference to our controls, just like everything else. So we can say my controls equals input actions, as it's giving a suggested name here. So my controls input actions, and then in an awake function, in an awake function, we need to create a new pretty much object of the input actions. So what I mean by that, we can just say private awake. And then in here, we're going to say input actions equals new my controls. All right, next, what we need to do is write, we need to be able to enable and disable these controls with this game object. And model behavior comes with its own set of functions for on enable and on disable. So what we can do is say public void on enable. And in here, we're going to say input actions dot player and say dot enable. So we're going to enable the player's actions there. And then we also want to do it for disable. So public void on disable. And we'll say input actions dot player dot disable. And if you're wondering where player comes from, that's the name of the action map. So if I go back to Unity right quick and open up the, well, here in the starter assets here, the action map name is player. And that's another thing with the input action, with the new input system. So if I want to have different controls here, I can put them all on this little action map, create a new one. So if I want to like reverse the controls or give some wacky change of control somewhere along the game, I can just add a new action map in here and add new controls if I wanted to real easily there. So that's where the player name came from. And make sure you save. Whenever you make changes, make sure you save here as well. So now it should work properly when we want these actions to take place. So next we pretty much want to be able to press a button and something happens. So what we're going to do is say public void or private. Let's go private. Sorry. So what we're going to do is here what we want to say, if the player is staying in our little bubble and they press a button, then we want an action to happen. So similar to like the on trigger exit and the on trigger enter, what we saw before was the on trigger stay. So let's say private void on trigger stay this time. And then here we're going to do the same line. So if other, and I can just copy this, I guess. That makes things a lot easier. Let's say if the other one is the player. And then inside this statement, so first it detects if the player is here in my collider, and now I want to detect if the player presses the button. So I'm going to have another if statement in here and say if input action dot player dot action key. And you can see now with this player I have access to my action keys and all those different action maps that I have here. So if I come back to Unity, you can see all these different actions I have access to these now in my code. So if I come back in here, so input actions dot player dot, so if I say move, you can see I got move there. Sprint, I think was one. Sprint, got sprint there. But we want our action key. So I'm going to say dot action key. And I want to know if this is pressed. So I'm going to say dot was pressed this frame. And then I'm going to say debug dot log. And let's say I pressed the button. So saying if you go in here and you press the key down, the action key down, then we want to say I press the button. So we accessing, we up here we create a reference to our input system, and then we in this if statement we said input dot player dot action key, and the action key we created in our action map, and if it was pressed this frame, then we want to say I pressed the button. So coming back into Unity, if I hit play, and make sure I switch over to my console so we can see what's going on here. If I come over to my kiosk, the screen pops up. and I press the E key, it says I pressed the button. So we have that action there. And to give this some more flexibility, what we're going to do is add a Unity event to trigger when we press the button, so we can add more within Unity to this button press. So we can just come down here, say public void Unity event. Not public void, sorry, so just public Unity event. And just say my action. And now down in here, we can say, and like I said before, we don't need all these parentheses, so we can just get rid of this one. Hit enter, and you see it already tabbed over. I can just say my action.invoke, like so. Now if I go to Unity, we can simply test this out right quick and go to the ATM. And now you can see it has an action. So if I wanted to add like particle systems, sounds and things like that, I can easily just add it here versus adding it in code and things like that. So makes it a little easier. And to test this out, let's do something simple. Let's just say the ATM disappears. So I'll go ATM green, go to game object, set active bool, and me having this unchecked means it's going to be deactivate when I press the key. So I hit enter or I hit play. Hit that, press E key, and you saw it disappear. So we know that's working now. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit this screen to change the text to say press the E key and save that there. So now we have set up our interaction. And now what we can do is make more of these ATMs. So I'm gonna just click on my ATM green, hit Control D, move this somewhere else in the room. Let me rotate it 90 degrees or negative 90. And then I can change the material here. So since this one's green, I can go to where these materials are for the ATM by clicking on materials here. And let's say I want this one to be red. There's a red one in here. Or the coral. I'm gonna go coral, that's close to red. And now I have a red one here. Hit Control D again. Take that 90. Going back to the other side of the room. And I'll make this one purple. And all I did was drag in a new material in this material slot. And I can just rename these as I want to. Let's say ATM red. And then ATM purple. And they all have that same function there. So now if I hit play and come in here, they all should disappear when I go up to each one individually and press the E key. So if I come over here to this one, press E, it disappears. My other two are still there. E, disappear. E, disappear. So there we go. We have our input set up with the new input system, and we're ready to move forward to set up the puzzle manager. All right, so next we are going to make the puzzle manager. And the way this puzzle is going to work, we essentially going to have three puzzle piece holders And when a player goes to one of the kiosks here, and each one is going to control one of these puzzle piece holders. When they go to the kiosk, it's going to cycle through the puzzle pieces, and once the player gets the right sequence of puzzle pieces on each kiosk, then the door will open. So if that makes sense, it's about to right now. So let's make our first one, get it working, and then we can duplicate it to get the other ones working. So what we're going to do in our hierarchy is right click, go to empty, and did I put that in my environment? Because I don't want an environment. Okay, it's at the bottom. All right, so let's call this a puzzle piece holder. Enter, it says 000, so that's good. And in here, I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to 3D object, and I'm going to add a cube. I'm going to add a sphere, and I'm going to add a cylinder. Cylinder is fine. So just three different objects is fine. And then I'm going to resize these. Let me put this in a good position. I want it to be like right above the door. And I can resize just this puzzle piece holder, and that's going to change the size of all my objects in here. So I'm going to say 0.1, 0.5, go 0.4, because I still want it to be a little bit small and kind of floating in the air here. So like I said, we're going to have a puzzle piece holder, and what we want to happen is we want this to cycle through these three pieces, and then once the player gets the right sequence of pieces, so the first, so if I control D this and move it over, so kind of like a combination lock. So let's say you need a square, square, square to open the door, so you cycle through the different pieces until you get square, 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 and then the door opens. So I'm going to right click here, create another empty, and call this my puzzle manager. Hit enter, and I can just go ahead and make these children the puzzle manager just to clean things up a little bit. And then on my puzzle manager, I'm going to add a new script. So I need to go to add component and say puzzle manager, new script, create and add. And that's going to create this new script for me. And we're going to go over to Visual Studios to get this working. All right, so here we are in our puzzle manager. And here, once again, we don't need this update and start function. So we can delete those. And what we want to happen is, like we said, we want to be able to cycle through the puzzle pieces on those puzzle piece holders. And one thing we're going to need is a reference to those puzzle pieces. But instead of just writing 9 game objects, so instead of going public game object and say puzzle piece 1, instead of doing that 9 times, what we can do is use an array. So we know we broke it up in the editor as 3 different holders, so we're going to have 3 different arrays for those as our holders. So here we can say public game object, and to make this an array, we add square brackets there. So, and we can say puzzle piece holder 1, and then just duplicate that to 2, and duplicate that to 3. So that makes a little bit more sense and a little bit more organized than having 9 puzzle pieces and then having to deal with those 9 puzzle pieces. We can just have our puzzle piece holders as an array, and we know each of these arrays is going to have 3 of those puzzle pieces in it, or as many as we want. So if we wanted to add another row or add more more pieces to the array, we can do that easily within Unity. So the next challenge we run into is we want to be able to, when a player presses the action key, we want to be able to cycle through these puzzle pieces. And thinking through this issue, one solution I came up with is using a counter. So the counter starts at 0 and is at the 0 puzzle piece. And then when you press the button, the counter goes up to 1 and it shows the 1 puzzle piece. You hit the counter again, it goes to the 2 puzzle piece, and so on and so forth. So to do that, what we're going to need is a counter, and the counter can be just an integer. So we can say private int, and we'll just do 1 for now, and then we'll duplicate it going forward. So since it's going to be for individual kiosks or ATM machines, I'm just going to name it the color of that machine. So I'm going to say green counter. And we want each kiosk to pretty much function independently with that Unity event that we had it on. So we're going to make an individual function for this. So I'm going to say public void green ATM. So this function I'm making right here is just going to be for that green ATM. And we're kind of breaking one of the rules of object-oriented programming, where the function that, or one object has all the function and that it needs on itself, but here we're going to put it in the manager, and then the manager is pretty much going to hand it off to the ATM. So to make this work, the first thing we need to do is add to the counter. So we're going to say green counter plus plus, and what this does is just add 1 to the counter. So if it's at 0, it's going to add 1, and it goes, the green counter is going to be at 1. If it's at 1, it's going to add 1 to that. It's going to be 2, and so forth. So it's always going to add 1 to the number. This is the same way as writing green counter equals green counter plus 1. These two are essentially writing the same thing. So whatever value the green counter is going to add 1 to it. So next we need a way to cycle through how we need to pretty much have these counter number cycle through the shapes. And just thinking through this issue, is the best way I thought of coming up doing this is with a switch. So if I write switch, with this I can just switch through the value. So based on the value of my green counter, I can have different things happen. So in here I can say green counter, and I can say case 0. So this is saying that the case, so if green counter is at 0, what do I want to happen? And if the case is 0, I'm going to say puzzle piece holder 0 dot set active equals true. And then I can just control D for the other two here. Say false there, 1, 2. And then to close a case statement, you say break. So what is this saying here? So what I just said is, if my green counter is at 0, then I want my puzzle piece holder 0 object to be set to true, and then whatever else is in this array to be set to false. So whatever's in the 1 object and the 2 object slot, element 1 and element 2, when those to be set to false. And that'll make sense here in a second. Let me save this right quick, and that'll make sense when I come back to Unity. So let me just explain a little bit to make it make sense a little bit. So now, in my puzzle manager, you see I have my puzzle piece holder, and in here it has a array. It's looking for an array of game objects. So what I'm going to do is put a 3 in here. Now it's looking for my 3 puzzle pieces that I have under my puzzle piece holder. So I can put my cube, my sphere, and my cylinder in here. And what I just did with this switch statement was, I said If my green counter is at 0, then I want my object at the 0 position to be active, what's in the 1 position to be false, and what's in the 2 position to be false. So what that's going to do here is it's going to set my cube active, and it's going to set this cylinder off. It's going to set this sphere off. So this is what I should have when my counter is at 0. And then I can just go through and cycle through these based off this green counter. So let me just copy this, hit enter, and say case 1. So if it's a 1, then I'm going to set this false, this second position true, and then that last one's false. All right, and then one more. Well, I'm gonna need 2 more, so go back here. I set this to 2, and then I'll set this last one to true, and go false. Yeah, and that could have stayed false. There we go. All right, so now we got, if our green counter is 0, then this is going to happen. It's going to set my game object at the 0 position to true, then in the other position it's to false, and then if it's set to 1, it's going to set the position in the second, it's going to set my game object at my 1 position to true, and if it's at 2, then it's going to set my game object at the 2 position to true. But we need one more case here. So how are we going to get it back to 0? So we go 1, 2, 3. Every time we hit this button, it's going to keep adding. So we need one more condition, one more case to reset that value. So let's go here, copy this one more time. And I guess we really don't need to copy it. We can just say case 3. We want to reset the game counter back to 0. So we can say green counter equals 0. And that's going to reset that value. And then the default, we don't need the default value here. That's just if you want, if you're using this for some another use case and you need a default value, you can add a default value to a default condition there as well. And then we also, on this third condition, we want to reset it back to the 0 position because it's going to be at 0, but since it doesn't update each frame, it's not going to change it, and it's probably just going to skip over to 1. So let's go ahead and reset this to that first condition. So it's going to be at 0, and it's going to turn these back to false. True, false, false. That's the first condition. So let's save this here. We can go back to Unity. And if we go to our green ATM, we can see we have this function on here, and we can just replace this one. You can either just clear it out like that by hitting this negative sign here, and then hit plus again. You can drag in your puzzle manager. Click this no function, go down to puzzle manager, and you should see green ATM. Just put that in there. Let's make sure we know our green ATM is, and we go to the right one. And it's at the square, so make sure on your puzzle piece holder that you have the 2 puzzle pieces in the second and third slot turned off or deactivated. So here, just click on this checkbox over next to the name to deactivate it. And then make sure in the puzzle manager that you have the first element set up for now. And then we'll set up the next 2 here in a second. So if I hit play, I step back, you can see there's a square in that position. I go to my green kiosk, I press the E key, I look back, Now I have a cylinder. And since I'm still in this space, I can just hit E. You can see it's cycling through that for me. I'm going to come out of play. And I'm going to set up these other ATM positions. So here, again, I'm going to just put a 3. And then for the puzzle pieces, put the cube. And if you want to switch these up, you can do that as well. So they're not, it's all the same. And then for this last one, 3. Cube here. Cylinder. Make sure I turn these off here. Now they're all starting on the cube. And now when I go back to my code, I need to set up the other ATMs. And here we had a green counter, so we're going to need a purple counter. And then a red counter. And then for this function here, we can just copy it. So Control C, highlight it all, Control C, hit enter. Call this one the purple ATM. And then where it says placeholder 1, just replace this 1s with 2s. All right, and do the same thing for the red ATM. So paste it. Oh yeah, make sure you change the counter up here as well. Purple. Then this is the red ATM. Red counter. Now this might be a little complicated, but this is a more complicated puzzle. But it's good practice. Get your brains thinking. Oh yeah, and don't forget to change the counter reset at the bottom too. Red, purple. Okay, so save all of that. And now we are going to go back to Unity. So we have square, square, squares here. And on our red ATM, do the same thing as we did with the green ATM. So what you can do, instead of just hitting this minus, you can just replace this little slot here. So put in Puzzle Manager there. Go to Puzzle Manager, red ATM. And go to the purple one. Drag in your Puzzle Manager, purple ATM. And we can save that there, hit play. Now, if I go over, here's the purple. Kiosk pops up. If I look over, hit E. Oh no, it's not switching. So I messed something up there. We can go check that out. Come over here to the red one. Hit E. And that one's not working. My green one's still working. Yeah, my green one's still working. I'm gonna come out of play and go check out the code right quick. Purple counter. So it's saying I'm not using my purple counter here, but I have it here. Oh, so my switch statement. One more spot, I forgot to change it. So purple. And red here. There we go. So make sure you change all those spots there. Now, let me go try it. Okay, my purple, my screen pops up. There we go. Now it's switching. I go to my green. There we go. So now we have our puzzle manager set up to switch the puzzle pieces there. And I know that was probably a little bit complicated, but we got through it. So we set that up. And next we need to make our win condition. And like I said, it's going to be a certain combination of puzzle pieces to get this to win here to open the door. So let's go ahead and do that next. All right, so now, like I said, we want to set up our win condition. So let's go back to our puzzle manager script. And the reason I wanted to put these, so back here in our puzzle manager script, and one of the reasons I wanted to be able to control the ATMs from the manager script, because I wanted to be able to detect when certain game objects in these puzzle pieces are active, so I can detect when there's a winner, or when the right combination is active. So what I want to do is create a new function, and I'll just put it here at the top. So I'm going to say public void winner. It's called the winner. And here, like I said, I'm going to detect when certain objects are active in the hierarchy. And if they are active, then when you get the right sequence, then the door will open. So what I'm going to do is say if puzzle piece holder, and I'll just say 0 for now, dot is active, or dot active in the hierarchy. So before, like down here, we set dot set active true or false. If you are trying to detect if something is true or false in an if statement, then you need to use this active in hierarchy. So let's say if the 0 position or the 0 game object is active in the hierarchy, and the puzzle piece odors 2 is active in the hierarchy, and one more, puzzle holder 3 active in the hierarchy, then for now I just say you win. Debug log you win. But so like I said, this is just a simple one. So like down here, how we changed the different positions to be true and false. Here it's going to detect which one of those objects are true and false, or are active in the hierarchy. Well, essentially true, essentially are visible in our hierarchy. So let's say the first puzzle piece has to be 0, which is the cube. Let's say the second one has to be 1, which is the sphere, I believe. And then let's say the third one has to be the cylinder. One thing to keep in mind, or you might want to write down these rules somewhere, what you got right here, because it can get confusing. So you got to remember your green kiosk is controls puzzle piece 1s, so this has to be a square. Your purple kiosk, I start calling it kiosk. Your green ATM controls the placeholder 1. Your purple ATM controls 2, and your red ATM controls 3. So your green ATM has to be a square, your purple ATM has to be a sphere, and your red ATM has to be a cylinder for this to work. And then also to get it work, we have to put that function on each of these ATMs. So I set it up this way per second. So I set it up this way so it's not being detected each frame per second. If we could put this in an update function, and it would detect like each frame per second, it would check to see if these objects are active, but we want to refrain from using the update as much as possible, just to save on performance and things like that. So here we have it in our function. So each time we call like this ATM function, we also can call the winner function to pretty much check to see if this happens. So if I go back to Unity and then on like ATM green, I can just hit this plus and I can add another function on top of this. Go to Puzzle Manager and say winner. So on the green ATM, we have the Puzzle Manager with the winner function. We're gonna go to the red, hit that plus, put the Puzzle Manager, and go to winner function. Then the purple, put the Puzzle Manager, and winner function. All right, so we have those there. So now every time we hit that action button, it's going to check and see if the configuration is right. And if it is, then we should have a winner. And remember, this first position should be a cube. The second position should be a sphere. And this third position should be a cylinder. And our purple one should be controlling our third one. And our red should be controlling the second one. So those, for this demo purpose, that's the only two we need to change. So let's hit play. And I'll switch over to the console so we can see what happens. So we said the second position, which is the red, I believe. No, purple. Should be my sphere. And then my red over here should be the cylinder. And there you go. It says you win. So we have that right match there. So that's good. So now we want to make that open the door. So going back to our code, and just like before, we can add a Unity event for this. So we can just say public Unity event and say, I want to just say, call this the chicken dinner. So winner, winner, chicken dinner. And then in here, just like before, we'll say chicken dinner dot invoke, and whatever we want to happen there is going to happen. So we save that here. So you get the winning match, you get your chicken dinner. And hold on, I want to put this not outside of that function, but inside here. So let me control X that. I want to put that in here. So when this condition happens, I want chicken dinner to be invoked. I'll save that there and go back into Unity. So now on the puzzle manager, it's looking for that function there. And what we're going to do is set the doors to deactivate when we get that correct match. Let me click on this door. So door left. Go to my puzzle manager. Make sure I know what door left is. And say door left. Game object set active. And since it's at 0, since that's unchecked, it's going to deactivate. And then this other door left right there. Click on door manager. Puzzle manager. And then click on that other door left. And do the same thing. Game object set active. So when I get those two to the correct position, they should open. So hit play. And this was my second position. And this had to be the sphere. And this one needs to be the third position. And there we go. You win. And that door pops open and you can get out. So that's our puzzle there. So we have our win condition now, and we can get out once the right condition is met. Let's look at our checklist. Here it is. So we have a win condition set. Next, we need a losing condition. So how do we lose the game? So the easiest way to do this is to set a timer in here. So we can just have like a 30-second timer or something like that and count down to 0. So let's do that right quick. So like I said, now we need to have our losing condition. So let's go ahead and make a timer script to this game. So when the timer hits 0, then it stops everything in our game. So first, we are going to create a little timer script. So let's right click over in the hierarchy, go to UI and Text Mesh Pro like we did before. And we don't want it, so you can see here it brought me just to this one right here that's on my purple ATM, and we don't want that to happen. So let's go ahead and delete that, and let's go ahead and create a new canvas. So right click in the hierarchy, go to UI and just say canvas, and that's going to give you a new canvas, and we can call this the game over canvas. And let's go to UI, Text Mesh Pro, and this one we can just have on the screen. So you can see if I switch over to the game view, you can see where that is on the screen. We can use this little crosshair here to position it at the top, and then give it a little bump down by saying -50, and then we can increase the font to, let's say, 120. You see it's a little messed up here. That means we just need to alter the box that it's in. So if we go back to our scene view and double click on the text, you can see the box is kind of small. So if I switch to my rect tool, I can stretch this out and then recenter it using the crosshair here. You can see that looks a little better. Go back and put it down to -50. So it's in the right position, and then go to my alignment, put it in the center, and go back to the game view and see what it looks like. So that looks good to me. And I'm gonna go down a little bit further, and on this Text Mesh Pro, it has the outline. So I'm gonna click this checkbox. I'm gonna give it a little outline just to make it look a little better and more readable. So I am going to call this my timer. And then my text, I can just put anything here. This is going to change once I hit play. So I just put 0 seconds, so I can just say 30 seconds or something like that. So now let's create the timer script. So I go to my project manager, my puzzle manager. Well, let's make this a different way. If I go up to, where is it? Assets, create, C# script. So I go all the way to the top where it says assets, create, C# script. And I'm gonna call this my timer script. Hit enter. Then open that in Visual Studio. So here we are going to need the update for this, but we don't need the start. And I guess we can use the start to always reset the timer when we come in. So let's do that. Well, it's going to start on game time, so we need the start. So let's delete the start. We're going to go. The timer is going to be set by the game clock. So when the game starts, that's when the timer starts. So first, we need a reference to that box we just used. And since we're using Text Mesh Pro, we need to use the library. So we got to go up top and say using TMP Pro. And now in our mono behavior, in our class down here, we can say public TMP underscore text and say the display time there. We need a float for our time. So say private float current time. So this is a basis of what we need for our timer. We can get it working with this, but we're going to add a little bit more. So just to see this working, let's see what we get with this. So what we're going to come down here and say is our current time minus equals time dot delta time. And then we can say if our current time is less than 0, then time dot time scale equals 0. And that's going to pause the game for us. And we can, right now we have this already at 0, so it's starting at 0. So we can just hit equals 30 for now. And that's going to give us 30 seconds. And then we also want to have our display time showing the current time. So under our current time, we're just going to say display time dot text equals current time dot toString. So our current time is going to be minus time dot delta time, and then our display time is going to match whatever our current time is by converting that to the string. And then when the timer hits 0, it's going to pause or freeze everything. So when the time scale equals 0, that's the same as pausing the game and pretty much freezing all the physics in the game. We'll save that and see what happens. Go to our puzzle manager, hit add. We can just drag our timer script over to it. So puzzle manager, just drag this under here. And now it's looking for that reference to the display time. So let's drag this timer in there. Let's hit play and see what happens. So there you go. You see our timer is going down, but we have a whole bunch of decimal places that does not look good there. So let's go ahead and fix that issue. So going back in here to our timer script, what we can do to fix that issue is pretty much have another variable that rounds our current time to the nearest whole number. So in here, what we can do is say private float display time. I already got display time. What I want to call this, I can call this my so I do want to call this display time. So yeah, I'll call this display time. And then up here, I'll call this display time text. There we go. Just to have some good names here. It's always good to have good names for your variables. There we go. So now, down here, where this current time equals my time minus delta time, my current time minus delta time, what I want to do is say my display time equals math f, which is a math function, dot round, and then current time. And what math f dot round does is rounds to the nearest integer. And then down here in my display text, instead of displaying the current time, I'll say display time dot toString. So now, instead of showing that current time, I'm going to be showing that display time text, which is rounded to the nearest integer. So coming back in here, save all that, hit play. And I gotta reset this display time text right here since I changed the name, it lost that reference to it. So let me just go ahead and put that back down there. Hit play. And there we go. Now it's counting down with that whole integer, and it looks a lot better. come out of play there. So now, one more thing to make it look a little bit nicer is I'm going to add a S at the end so you know exactly that you're counting down from seconds. So whoever's looking at this some point in the time scale change, you know that it is seconds there. So what this is going to do is pretty much add a S to the end of the number. What I did, just put a plus sign here and then add 2 quotes, double quotes, and then put an S in there. It's going to add an S to the end of that display time. And you can put the whole word there if you want to, but I'm just going to put S there. And there we go. And then when that gets down to 0, I forgot what this was supposed to be. Yeah, I forgot the sequence. But yeah, we have a timer there. When it gets to 0, we'll see what happens. And now it's 0. And I should have lost control here, but come back and see. No, because I didn't put I did put that in there. If current time is less than 0, then time scale should have went off. I think I should have lost movement with my mouse, but we shall see. Let me just put a debug log message in there. Just say game over the next time. All right, so we have this function here, and we are saying that when it gets to 0, we want something to happen. We pretty much want the game to be over. So let's also make a screen pop up and say game over and do something else. And you know what I like to do when I want things to happen at certain things, at certain intervals? I like to use Unity events. So I can just say public Unity event and call this game over events. So now if the current thing equals 0, then I can say game over event dot invoke there. And then I also can go a step further and say when this hits 0 to change the text to say game over as well. So I can say display text dot text equals game over. There we go. Hit save there. And let's go see what happens. Then I'm going to change this to be 10 seconds just so we don't have to wait the whole 30 seconds. And we just check everything over. If the current time is less than 0, then we want the time scale to equal 0. We want to say game over in the debug.log. Whatever event we have, we wanted to say trigger that event. And then we also want the display text to say game over. So hit play. 10 seconds. All right, just say game over and all that stuff happens. And I can't move, so I guess I can still look around. Cause I guess it still gives me mouse controls, but like I can't move because that involves the physics and all that good stuff. But we got the game over there, and we have a lose condition in here now. So there we have it. We have a pretty much a good little game here going. So we can go back in there, add a little bit more time. Cause we know now that the game over and this script is working, so we have a lose condition now. So we can go to our checklist and cross that out. And you can add more to it, add more, take away. But we have a lose condition now. Next, we have sound and particles, and this is all just making it look a little bit nicer, and polishing the game a little bit. So you can go ahead and add. So I like using. Did I close it? I think I did. So here it is. So I like using this one. This is a free asset that has a lot of good VFX and particle systems in it. So you can just add this to your project and we can use it a little bit. And then for any sounds, you can just go to like Pixabay. We go to pixabay.com. So here, if you go to pixabay.com, you can go down in this little checkbox where it says all images. You go to sound effects and just grab like any type of sound, a wind trumpet, I guess. And these are all free sounds to use, commercial free, royalty free, and all that good stuff. So I am going to grab this success fanfare trumpet and add this to the project. All right, so I downloaded it. Now I can go back to Unity. Well, my assets. If you ever get this error here, that just means you need to up there it goes. Just refresh. If it don't refreshes, then you just need to log back in. So let me try to find those assets. Here we go. I need to update it. Let me update. And then I'm going to import it. Import again. All right, so I have that in the project now. I can go ahead and close that and close this and then clear those errors. Go to my download folder and get that sound that I just grabbed. Throw that in there. All right, so now, like I said, now we're just in a state where we can just polish this up and make it look a little bit better. I do want to change the colors of these cubes to match their ATM color. So I'm just going to right click down in here, go to create, and then material. And I can call this purple. Then over here in the base color, I will make it purple. And I can add some emission to give it a little glow. And then also make that purple. Add a 1 there. So it's going to give it a little glow there. And then I'll drag that to my and just got to remember which kiosk is controlling which ATM is controlling which puzzle piece. So my puzzle manager, my puzzle 2 holder is being controlled by my, go back to my puzzle manager. Green, purple is controlling 2. And 2 is this cube here. So the middle is where my purple should be. And I'm gonna make that a little darker because that kind of looks pink to me. And I think it's the missions that is really making it look like that. So there we go. That's purple right there. And this last one is supposed to be red, so I can just duplicate this and call it red. Over there for red. Missions go over there for red. Add a 1. And this is going to be my far color. And I'm going to add these to all the shapes. And then one more for green. Control D for green. Rename green. And then change these colors to green. Yeah, that's going to be for my first one here. All right, so that gives a little more distinction of what these are and which cube match which kiosk system. So that's a little bit better for our game and get the player a little more direction there. Um, so yeah, the sound. So what we want to do, so if you get the chicken dinner, if you win the game, we want to play the sound here. So we need to add a audio listener in our game, well, audio source in our game, my bad. So we can just add that to the puzzle manager. If we right click, go to audio, audio source, and we can call this the win sound. We want to turn off play on awake, and then we want to add our sound in there to the audio source. And then on the puzzle manager, we can just click on this chicken dinner. This is what's going to be called when we win the game. We just drag in our win sound. Where it says no function, go down to audio source and say play. And it's going to play our sound for us. That easy. And then for the particle system, so we have the JMO assets for our particles, and they do have a website where you can just easily check out what these particles are. And I guess we'll go check it out right quick. I go there frequently, so it should be saved there. So here, you go to this website, you can see the Cartoon FX Free is what we are using, and you can just cycle through these to see which particles do what. So let me turn that off. So here, if you click, you got some bats, some splashes, some blood, broken hearts, enemies, pick up skulls. So what's this? The diamonds, hearts, smileys, pick up star, rocks, smashes, explosions, wandering spirits, dark aurora, fire explosion. So just trying to find something I would think would be good for a winning effect. You can really choose any of these, so it really doesn't matter. I think that stays. Okay. But to just choose one here, like I said, it really doesn't matter. I'll do that one. CFX or bubble C. And I could just search it, bubble here. So go back to my puzzle manager and put the winner there. Oh yeah, and then just I can put this is like a game object. No, it's not. Where is this? Hold on. Sorry about that. Prefabs. That's what I want. With the prefabs, and then I'll just pick one here. Let's say not impact. Go light. A light glow loop here. And I will make this a child of my puzzle manager as well. And here it has the same different thing like play on start and thing like play on awake. So I can turn that off and let me move this to the door. And then I'll just stop it. And then same thing like with the audio, I can just say put that particle system in there. Click that particle system and play. Hit save there and we should be done there. We have sounds, we have particles, and if we hit play, we should be able to hear everything. So let me go back and try to remember the sequence I have for this. So 0, 1, 2. So this should stay the same. This should be in the 1 position, and this should be in the 2 position. So let me hit play. Get my screen to pop up, press the E key. That's in one position. Go. And I heard the sound in my headphones, so it's there, but I still have this timer here, so we want to disable that so it doesn't work, essentially. So what we can do here is, let me see, timer script, and just say bool enable. So yeah, so what we can do here is, instead of like going in the code and disabling it, we could just disable this script here so it doesn't affect anymore, and just turn it off essentially. So that would be the easiest route to take. So when you win, just like when it up here we say set active, here we just have enable. And what I did there was I just hit this plus button and drag this timer script up in here, click this drop down, go to timer script, and then bool enable. Now turn that off. And let me stop this. Then I don't know why my particle system didn't play. It says to play, but let me hit play again just to make sure that timer is working. There. All right, and then the timer stop. You can walk out, and then what you can do, I think there's no floor here. I don't know. There's no floor there, so let me fix that right quick, and so you don't fall out. So what you can do is to add like another box here, and what I would probably do is just fix out this exterior a little bit. So as soon as you step out, you get a game over box or something, or you the winner box or something like that to show that you won. I'll put this here. Put that to negative. And the tutorial is done. I'm sorry I didn't announce it, but now it's up to you to create your world and make it as more creative as possible. Like for me, I would probably put some hints around the room just so the player knows what to do, like knows that the kiosks, I mean the ATMs have to be a certain order, maybe have like 3 different images that show like different patterns of these, and they have to try each one before to try to open the door. So that's something I probably would add to this game just to give the player a little bit more direction, because now you really don't know what you have to do. You don't know have any clues about how to get out. So that's probably something I would do next. But that can be a challenge for you. So how would you give the player some clues on how to get out of here? So I want to thank you all for watching this tutorial. And if you have any questions, just let me know down in the comments. If you want to know how to do something else here in Unity, just let me know, and I will make a new video about it. So thank you for watching, and I will talk to you all next time. Bye.